Welcome back to NUICfootball.com. I am your host, Kyle Kampmeyer. What Week 8 brought us to eliminate 4 and 5 teams from making the playoff field potentially, Week 9 bounced back with quite a few favored 4 and 4 teams losing, allowing us to see 6 at-large teams make the field with 4 and 5 records for the first time in IHSA history. Unfortunately, one of those games was played between Stockton and Galena, the oldest rivalry game in the NUIC. Stockton held a 2-touchdown lead, 24-12, before a Galena comeback catapulted the Pirates into the lead, 27-24, with under 3 minutes left to play to give Galena the win. Lena Winslow stamped its finish on their 6th undefeated regular season with a 36-8 win over Forreston, powered behind 279 yards and 4 touchdowns by Gage Dunker. This gave the Panthers the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Despite that loss, Forreston will host a first-round game with a familiar opponent. This is the 4th time they will meet Marquette in the playoffs, where the Cardinals are 3-0 against the Crusaders. Du-Pec played a close game with Althoff, but couldn't keep it going as the Crusaders pummeled the Rivermen in the second half to pull away with a 41-18 win. However, the Rivermen have a favorable draw, one of which could see them compete against Big Northern teams all through the quarterfinals if they can break through to round 3 for the first time in the co-op's history. Fulton coasted as they should have to make a 6-3 record. Now they get to revisit their rivalry with Morrison in the playoffs for the first time since 1998. This will be a great game to see as Morrison joins the NUIC next year. Amboy put on a show over Polo, blasting the Marcos 52-6. Amboy is gearing up for another run to Monmouth, while Polo has some adjustments to make in order to try for a trip to get back to Monmouth. Milledgeville put the brakes on early in Week 9 as they guided to an easy win. Now the test comes to see if the Missiles can make a run for the semifinals, where the potential of a rematch with Amboy would await. Orangeville and River Ridge both turned Week 9 wins into playoff qualifications. The Broncos face a tough road as they travel to Milledgeville, who put up a running clock by halftime in their first meeting. The Wildcats hit the road to Martinsville, a nice 5-hour jaunt southeast of Champaign to try for a first-round upset. The playoffs are here as the stakes get turned up, and we're going to talk about these matchups right now.
This NUICfootball.com production is powered by Leamon's Ambulance Service in Lena, Illinois. We always plan for the expected, but sometimes we need to plan for the unexpected. Leamon's has been serving Stevenson and Joe Daviess counties since 1869. Call someone you can trust in your time of need. Call Leamon's Ambulance Service. Rose Bowman and the Choice Realty team understand that buying or selling real estate is among the most important financial transactions of your life. They are dedicated to providing personal and thorough service with a sharp focus on their clients' needs. Their licensed staff looks forward to assisting you in any of the following areas: residential, condominiums, new construction, land, farms, commercial, investment, or leasing. Choice Realty is locally owned and operated with offices in Freeport, Galena, and the Galena territories. So when it's time to buy or sell, give Rose Bowman a call at 630-697-2480.
River Ridge has to make the long trip down to Martinsville as the Wildcats enter this game with a 5-4 record. Martinsville enters this game with a 7-2 record. Last week, River Ridge won 60-20 over South Beloit, while Martinsville lost to St. Thomas More 20-14. This is the first time these two teams have met in the playoffs, and one of the things that we know about Martinsville is their 2 losses are to arguably probably the 2 favorite teams to make it to Monmouth. St. Thomas More, they just lost to 20-14, as I previously stated, and earlier this year they played Amboy, who beat them 60-6. With that said, River Ridge has to make this long trip down to Martinsville in order for this game to get played. River Ridge had a nice little run there towards the end of the season as their schedule did soften up a little bit in order to allow them to get some games against teams that they knew that they could win. They did have a little bit of an upset loss there when they lost to West Prairie, but things happen, and they were able to bounce back with the nice big win that they needed to get over Alden Hebron in order to book their trip to the playoffs. Now they have this big trip on the road. It's probably not a big deal considering the fact that they were able to stay away from Amboy and Milledgeville in the first round. They also didn't have to get to St. Thomas More or Ridgewood either. Martinsville, though, is going to be a good test. They do have a very good team there. I can't think of his first name, but Herrera has been a guy that we've heard about all season long for the Blue Streaks, who has been able to really help guide this offense for Martinsville all season. The Blue Streaks will enter this game as 26-point favorites. And looking at how a lot of their comparable scores and games have gone, this game should go in favor of Martinsville pretty heavily. But you never know what will happen. It is the playoffs. There are things that River Ridge can do to help eliminate some of the mistakes. But in order to do that, they have to take control of the mistakes that get made in that game in order to bounce back from these things. If River Ridge can do these things, they might be able to keep this game close. And on all facets, that is what they need to do in this game. They need to slow the game down, be able to chew up clock, control the ball, and they're going to have to play physical. If they can play physical and put the tempo in their favor, they might have a chance to make some noise here, but they have to be able to do that for all four quarters. It can't just be right out of the gates and then it subsides. They have to be able to stay on the gas all game long. My pick is Martinsville to win this game, but hopefully we see some good things happen for the Wildcats at the same time, and maybe we might see that first round upset. You never know. Hiawatha travels to Amboy as the Hawks lost last week 40-24 to Peoria Heights to bring their record to 4-5, and Amboy got the big win over previous number 3 ranked Polo 52-6 to improve to 9-0. These two teams have never met in the playoffs, and looking at common opponents and strength of schedule and all the good stuff, this game is going to be pretty ugly pretty quick. If Amboy can come out of the gates and do the things that we've seen them do all season long, I would expect this game to be a running clock by halftime, where Amboy should be able to get their starters some rest, get some of their backups in the game, and get some good quality playing time in a playoff environment for the Clippers. Amboy's going to enter this game, unbelievable, as a 60-point favorite. So whether or not they get to 60 points, time will only tell. Should they? Yeah, probably. Taking a look at some of what Amboy has done on their schedule, they average 55 points per game. They just scored 52 this past week against the number 3 ranked team, who this week is ranked number 4. So with that being said, there's not a whole lot to talk about here. As long as Amboy shows up for this game, which they should since it's in the harbor, Amboy is going to roll very quick. Orangeville is back in the playoffs, and they have to hit the road to play Milledgeville. Orangeville enters with a 5-4 record after they received a forfeit win over Quest Charter Academy last week, and Milledgeville beat Bushnell Prairie City 72-12 to improve their record to 8-1. These two teams last met in the playoffs way back in 1995 when Milledgeville won 26-8 in the first round. These guys also met earlier this year, back in week 4, where Milledgeville won by a running clock 50-24 with a halftime score of 50-0, and they put all the subs in the second half, which ultimately led to Orangeville getting some points on the board. With this game, Milledgeville should be able to control this contest early. They come into this game already having beat Orangeville relatively handily, and they're going to be a 38-point favorite in this game. The chance of a running clock happening is still very much a possibility. And really all they need to do is get things going. You have Connor Nye back under center. Micah Tom-Smith is coming off of a big week. Carter Livingood is starting to get things going along with Connor Johnson to help take pressure off the run game and getting the pass game going. There's just so many things that the Missiles are doing right now and that we've seen over the course of the year that are starting to come together at the right time to get the Missiles on a playoff run that can potentially see them reaching the semifinals. And if they get to the semifinals, there's a high possibility that they could even make the chance to get to Monmouth as well. Here, they got to take care of business. Orangeville needs to match the intensity of Milledgeville out of the gates. They did not do that the first time around, where they literally got ran right off the field. Orangeville does feature one of the top running backs in all of 8-man football in Blake Fulgate, and they're going to have to utilize him a lot. He's one of those kinds of players that, a simple cut one way and a cut back another, and he can be gone in a hurry, but they got to be able to get those holes open for them, and that's been the downfall of Orangeville most of the year, is the lack of physical line play up front, not getting off the ball fast and not sustaining blocks at the same time. While this is an intriguing matchup just for the fact that it is two local teams going up against each other, Milledgeville should win this one going away. West Prairie makes the trip to Polo, where the Cyclones enter this game 6-3 after they beat West Central last week 36-22, and Polo enters with a 7-2 record after they lost to Amboy 52-6. These two teams last met in the 2021 playoffs, where Polo won 66-16 in round 1 on their way to their second consecutive state championship. Here we have a team in West Prairie who started off the year what looked to be on a very good win streak. They got out to a 4-0 record. There was articles being written about them and the success that they're having, in which it is a successful season. But then they actually ran into the harder part of their schedule. They had 3 consecutive losses to South Fork, Pawnee, and Cambridge Ridgewood, and all 3 of those games were lost by over 30-point differentials. They came back with a hard-fought win over River Ridge, and then they beat West Central in order to get to the 6-3 mark. But now they got to face Polo. And Polo is one of those teams that is a perennial power when it comes to 8-man football. They won the state title in 2019. They won the state title in 2021. They were one play away from making the state championship again last year, as they lost in the semifinals to the eventual state champ in West Central. So, Polo does have 2 losses there, and they're hurting a little bit coming off this 52-6 pounding they took by Amboy. But then again, a lot of teams have lost to Amboy. And when you take a look at Polo's schedule, their only other loss came to the number 2 ranked team, which is Milledgeville. So they lost to the number 1 ranked team. They lost to the number 2 ranked team. They beat the number 5 ranked team. So yeah, Polo's sitting there ranked number 4, and overall they're pretty darn good, because when you take a look at the top 10 rated teams in 8-man football, Polo clearly had the hardest schedule of them all. With that said, on the other side of the ball with West Prairie's schedule did not seem to bode to have a lot of resistance in it. They entered the playoffs rated as the 11th best team in 8-man, and their strength of schedule was relatively simple when you break it down to a lot of the teams in 8-man. They definitely had one of the easier schedules on slate, and across the top 11 teams in 8-man football, they by far had the easiest schedule to get to that 6-3 mark. With that said, West Prairie's 3 losses are all to teams that are ranked above them, and they're going to enter this game as an underdog, as Polo is favored to win this by 26 points. So with that said, one of the things that we saw out of Polo last week is that they were missing Carter Murdian. If he can return to this offense and provide a different dynamic that will allow them to throw the ball, not that Brock Soto doesn't throw the ball, and he does, and he throws it very well. But when you can put Carter Murdian at quarterback and utilize Soto either in the backfield or split out as an end or a receiver, it gives you another dynamic to be more explosive offensively. And what Polo needs to do is find ways to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers. You want to be able to get the ball to Soto. You want to be able to get it to Noah Dewey. You need to have D'Lo Fernandez chipping away, getting some yards as well. And when they do that, Polo can be very formidable. One of the things that we saw last week with Amboy was definitely the lack of control of the line of scrimmage. They definitely were way undersized in comparison to Amboy. And with that, not being able to meet that intensity, and of course not having Carter Murdian at the quarterback position, really allowed Amboy to put even more focus and attention to where Soto was at all times, which really then limited what Polo could do offensively, resulting in the large lopsided score. So with that said, Polo needs to continue working on things to get better. Hopefully they have everybody full key to start the playoffs. And if they do that, they should be able to coast to this win and get back into the quarterfinals for, what is it now, the 4th straight year? Yeah, 4 straight years into the quarterfinals. So they can do that. It's a pretty good run for Polo. And then you let the cards fall where they lie and see what else happens after that. So either way, you're gonna run into a rematch with a team that already beat you pretty heavily, and you got to get prepared for that again and hopefully have everything put together for that upset. But you can only take it one game at a time. Right now, you got to focus on West Prairie, and if Polo can do that, they should run away with this one with a big win into that quarterfinal round.
This portion of our broadcast is brought to you by Diedrich Epoxy Flooring. Serving northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, Diedrich Epoxy is the source for all of your epoxy needs. Give Diedrich Epoxy Flooring a call today at 815-239-1158 for your free estimate.
Marquette is going to travel to Forreston, where both these teams come in with matching 7-2 records. Forreston being the home team with that 8 seed, while Marquette is visiting with that 9 seed. Last week, Forreston lost to Leamon Winslow 36-8 in the rivalry, and Marquette beat Dwight 27-26 and held on to get that 7th win. These two teams last met in the playoffs in round 1 of 2019, where Forreston won 42-7. And in the playoffs, this is the 4th time these two teams will meet, as Forreston holds a 3-0 record against Marquette. Their closest game being back in the 2012 playoffs where Forreston won 35-34. Taking a look at how everything breaks out right now, we've seen Marquette play some games with teams that we felt weren't really up to speed. I mean, they joined this new conference, the Chicagoland Prairie Conference. It features Seneca, who's ranked in Class 2A. You have a bigger school in Ridgewood out of Norridge. You had St. Bede. You have Dwight, which they were able to get past Dwight, and Dwight is in the Class 2A playoffs. Ridgewood made the playoffs in Class 3A. So they're or 4A, I'm sorry. Ridgewood's in the 4A playoffs. So, and taking a look at that, Marquette was able to beat Ridgewood. So, going back to things where people are like, well, 1A can't beat 4A teams. Here you go. Here's one. Ridgewood's in the Class 4A playoffs, and Marquette beat them 36-26. Marquette's in the Class 1A playoffs. It just goes to show you that not every team in all the classes are as great as people try to make them up to be just because they're bigger enrollments. But taking a look at some of the things with Marquette, Coach Yupst has done a great job with the Crusaders. He's been able to keep this team afloat for the years that he's been there. And with that, they've been able to put together some really good teams that have made some really deep playoff runs. The last time we've seen the Crusaders in the state semifinals were back-to-back runs in 2015 and 2016. But in recent years, they've kind of had a struggle as they've lost to Dakota in 2018 and again last year in 2022. And a couple other teams that they've fallen out to. And of course, running into Forreston as well has not been very good for the Crusaders either. Their biggest loss came to Aurora Christian, 42-0. And Aurora Christian is one of those teams who we have seen annually since they've dropped back into the 1A playoffs. And then their other loss was to Seneca, 28-6. And there's a lot of people that may have Seneca picked to make a run at the state title game in Class 2A. Granted, that 2A bracket in the north side is absolutely loaded, but they are one of the top 4 ranked teams in the state in Class 2A. And they lost that game 28-6. But when I talk to different people throughout the area and people that have seen Marquette play and have seen Forreston play, Forreston should be coming in as the favorite in this game. They get to be at home on top of that. And when you take a look and break down both these teams, it's hard to decipher 7-2 and 7-2. But when you take a look at how both teams compare to each other, Forreston's going to enter this game as an 18-point favorite. Now, one of the things that we've seen out of the Cardinals this year is they've been 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown favorites, and then they're winning by a touchdown or 2 touchdowns. And we continue to hear we left 2 touchdowns on the field or things that matter. And in all honesty, they're not wrong. They have. So what we haven't seen yet is we haven't really seen Forreston play a complete game. Now, what we have seen out of the Cardinals the last 2 weeks, they did have a very tough game with Du-Pec, a team that was heavily favored to beat Forreston in that game. And they did. They beat them by a touchdown. I think going into the game, Du-Pec were 10-point favorites, but the game was also expected to be a higher scoring game. And I think a lot of people were expecting a larger score differential in favor of Du-Pec, of which, Forreston didn't allow that to happen. Against Lena Winslow, they were only down 8-0 at halftime, so they were able to keep that game relatively close. In the second quarter, they did stall out at the 1-yard line on a drive that chewed up most of the second quarter, which could have definitely, had they scored there, changed a little bit of the course of the game, possibly, but at least given us an even closer halftime score than what it was, being that it could have been 8-6 or 8-8 if they would have converted the touchdown and then the 2-point conversion. Albeit, though, they did give up a lot of yardage in the second half, of which then Lena Winslow ran away for that 36-8 win. In this game, you're going to see another team in Marquette who likes to run a double wing or wing T style offense, and they like to throw out of that style of offense as well. So they're going to be a team that will run the ball, but they will also throw the ball a little bit too. More so than you normally see out of a traditional wing T team. And Forreston has to be able to be ready for that. And if they can, and then they can control the ball and actually finish their drives and take care of business, Forreston should walk away with this win and move right on to the second round, where they would have to then most likely travel to Lena Winslow to play the Panthers one more time in the second round of the playoffs, something that we've become used to seeing here in recent years with those two teams squaring off with each other. But in this game, Forreston wins. Rockford Lutheran is going to travel to Lena Winslow, where they put their 5-4 record on the line. Lena Winslow enters this game ranked number 1 in state with a 9-0 record. Last week, Lena Winslow won 36-8 over Forreston, and Rockford Lutheran beat Genoa Kingston 20-12. These two teams last met in the playoffs back in Class 3A in 2002, where Lena Winslow won in the first round 46-0. Yes, you heard me right. These two teams met before in the playoffs in 2002 in Class 3A, and now both teams are meeting in Class 1A. So, with that said, Rockford Lutheran plays in the Big Northern against all these 3A and 4A schools, and all we keep hearing about is, well, this team and that team from the NUIC can't compete against the Big Northern. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, but we saw Rockford Lutheran come to Fulton last year and absolutely get beat. Or Fulton went to Rockford Lutheran. Either way, they met up. Fulton came away with that win 28-0. This time around, you're talking about the 3-time defending state champs playing host to Rockford Lutheran. And provided that Lena Winslow can do the things that they've been doing all year, which is run the ball, and then play some really, really good, tough defense. Lena Winslow comes in this game as a 34-point favorite. So this should be a quick win for the Panthers. Maybe it will put some of this stuff that we hear about the NUIC teams not being able to compete against other 3A schools to rest and see what happens. Obviously Rockford Lutheran is a 1A school, but they are on a waiver, and if they had the multiplier, they would be back up in the Class 3A field. But in order to do that, they'd have to win some football games, and right now you're heading into the Panther den to play Goliath, and I think this one will go in favor of the Panthers in a hurry. Expect a big rout here for Lena Winslow. We have Fulton at Morrison. While the wooden shoe is not up for battle here, it's still, to me, considered the wooden shoe game, and I'm sure it is to many others, despite the fact that the wooden shoe can only be won during the regular season. But it reignites a rivalry between Fulton and Morrison that The last time it was played was in the spring of 2021. Last week, Fulton beat West Carroll 66-0 to improve to 6-3, where Morrison beat Bureau Valley 38-13 to move their record to 8-1 on the year. These two teams last met in the playoffs back in 1998 in the first round, where Morrison won 38-15, but they did meet two other times in the playoffs. Both those games went in favor of Fulton, where Fulton holds the lead 2-1 in the playoffs. However, Morrison does hold the rivalry lead altogether, but in recent years, that lead or that rivalry has gone to Fulton, with the exception of the 2019 season. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. You got one team that is a very fast team. They like to run the ball a lot. And with the players that Morrison has, you can definitely tell you got Anderson, you got Strading, you got a couple other guys that have made a lot of noise this year. Very fast team, and have done some great things. They beat Princeton, who at the time was ranked number 1 in Class 3A. Princeton still enters the playoffs ranked number 3 in Class 3A. And really that put Morrison back on the map in Class 1A this year, after they went 5-5 and lost in the first round a year ago. But they do play Fulton, a team that in recent years has been able to beat Morrison, and a team that is, even though haven't seen each other in a couple years, I would say that they're still probably a little bit familiar with each other. And, Coach Lohr has been against Morrison for many years in his time in his tenure at Fulton as well. Definitely excited for this game. This definitely reignites a lot of things that a lot of people want to see. And of course, with Morrison moving to the NUIC next year, they get to bring back the wooden shoe as well for that rivalry. There's just so many good things that can come out of this game. And, Fulton's one of those teams that's been relatively young. We've talked about that a lot this year. There's been times where they've been able to play at different levels. We watched them knock off number 5 ranked Knoxville in Class 2A 42-0, just completely annihilated them. We watched them play for a half with Lena Winslow, similar to what Forreston did before they ultimately met their demise in the long run. But, there's things that we've seen Fulton do good, and there's things that we've seen Fulton do bad. But overall, we have watched Fulton get better week to week to week as the season has gone on. And they like to do it behind a good plethora of trying to run the ball, trying to throw the ball. They get a good mix of run and pass in there, trying to keep everything off balance. So if Fulton can do that, this could be a good opportunity for a potential upset. Morrison is only going to enter this game as a 6-point favorite. So with that said, the probability of Morrison winning is about 62% to, 38% for Fulton, something like that. Right in that ballpark, maybe. But likewise, it's still very close to where it could be a toss-up game. And I really don't know who to pick to win. I would say that the favorite definitely has to be Morrison. They're at home. But time will tell. Morrison definitely is very fast. That's something that Fulton's going to have to do. They're going to have to be able to play sound fundamental defense. They're going to have to play physical up front. They're going to have to play gap responsibility. They have to be able to seal off the edge. If they can do that and then get their corners to hit, come up and fill the gaps, I think they can find themselves with some success. And then offensively, they have to be able to take care of the ball. If they don't take care of the ball, this game could be a rout because Morrison will take care of the ball very well. They have not made very many mistakes all year long. I don't expect them to make a lot of mistakes in this game either. And when you're talking playoff football, usually the team that makes the least amount of mistakes is the team that gets to move on. But I know that a lot of people are very excited between Morrison and Fulton for this game. A lot of them wanted this game to happen, and here we are. The bracket and the seedings all worked out perfect for this game to take place in Morrison. While I want Fulton to win, I got to go with my gut, and my pick is Morrison. Hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll see. Go Steamers. Du-Pec makes their 4th consecutive trip to the playoffs, and for the 4th consecutive year, they get to host a home playoff game in the first round. They enter this game with a 7-2 record after they lost to Althoff Catholic last week, 41-18, and they will play host to Oregon, who comes in with a 5-4 record after Oregon beat Rockford Christian 48-13 to stamp their way into the playoffs for 2023. These two teams have never met in the playoffs, but both head coaches have faced each other as they played each other in the spring of 2021 when head coach Brock Kundert was the head coach at Aquin, and Aquin played Du-Pec over at Rockford Auburn High School in what was a very good contested game that did go in favor of Aquin that day. With that said, there is some familiarity between the coaches of these two teams, but as far as the teams and players themselves, not a whole lot of familiarity. I believe these two teams did meet up in the preseason for one of those preseason scrimmages that the IHSA allowed to have happen. And with that, it was a good opportunity for each team to kind of see how other teams do things. With it, you're going to see two teams that run similar style offenses and are going to want to spread the ball out while also trying to attack the middle of the line. Du-Pec, on the other hand, they have been more prone to the passing game, utilizing quarterback Cooper Hoffman as more of a, I wouldn't say a running quarterback, but he'll do a sprint right or a sprint left, get out into the flats, and then look downfield. And if the opportunity is open to take off, then he takes off, as he does enter as Du-Pec's leading rusher. But, I think the line is going to favor Oregon in this game. We've talked about the Du-Pec line for most of the year not being a very strong line, which they have not been. And with that, Oregon definitely does have a better overall line play. But on the skill side of things, I think that you definitely have to tip the cap to the quarterback position to Cooper Hoffman. And I think he's got some receivers that can definitely help him out in that pass game. And what we're going to have to see is the physicality of Du-Pec come out in this one. They're going to have to control the tempo up front right away. And really, you need to have that. If they don't come out and control that initial tempo and tenacity, they can find themselves on the wrong end of this game in a hurry. Du-Pec's going to enter this game as an 18-point favorite, and I feel that they are the favorite in this game. But at the same time, this is a team that, with Oregon, they're a battle-tested team. They're coming out of a big Northern Conference that features the Byron Tigers. Byron is clearly the number one team in state, one of the heavy favorites to not just get to Bloomington for the state championship game, but a favorite to win the state championship game all in the same time. So with that, Du-Pec has to do the things that we know that they're capable of doing. I do like Du-Pec in this game. 2-touchdown favorite. I don't know so much about that, but it could happen. I do expect this to be a great game and a close game. I could see an upset happening in this game, but you never know. I think that if Du-Pec can win this game, they potentially set themselves up with a good chance of meeting another big Northern team in round 2 in Stillman Valley, provided Stillman Valley takes care of business. And then that could potentially project them into a quarterfinal matchup where they would meet up with Byron. And if they can take one step at a time, reaching the quarterfinals would be one step further than any of the previous teams Du-Pec has put into the playoffs. Time will tell. We need to start seeing Du-Pec prove themselves in order to give them some more credit or merit, so to speak, in the 3A field. And, taking a look at how their schedule is, they definitely played a very tough schedule, one of the toughest schedules outside of the or inside of the top 10 rated teams in Class 3A, with the exception of Montini Catholic. So either way, this should be a good one here in Pecatonic. My pick is Du-Pec.
Our NUICfootball.com state rankings are presented by Leading Edge Fundraising. If you need to raise funds for new uniforms, tournament expenses, equipment, or more, look no further. Brandon Sharp at Leading Edge makes it easy for you and your team to have a fun and competitive way to raise funds for your program. Give Brandon a call today at 563-514-1647. Leading Edge Fundraising, your premier fundraising company.
Our final NUICfootball.com state rankings are in, and they go as such. In 8-man, finishing the year at number 1, right where they started, is Amboy at 9-0. At number 2 is Milledgeville at 8-1. Finishing out at number 3 is St. Thomas More at 9-0. At number 4 is Polo at 7-2, and number 5 is Bridgewood at 7-2. Number 6 is Martinsville at 7-2, and number 7 is Milford Cisna Park at 7-2. South Fork comes in at number 8 with a 7-2 record, and number 9 is Flanagan Cornell Woodland, also at 7-2, and rounding out the top 10 is South Beloit at 6-3. Other teams receiving votes are West Prairie at 6-3, and Pawnee at 5-4. In Class 1A, number 1 has been number 1 all year, and that's Lena Winslow at 9-0. Coming at number 2 are the Altoff Catholic Crusaders at 8-1. Number 3 is Camp Point Central at 9-0. Number 4 is Morrison at 8-1. Number 5 is Hope Academy at 8-1. Number 6 is Forreston at 7-2. At number 7 is Greenfield Northwestern at 9-0. Coming in at number 8 are the Fulton Steamers at 6-3. Number 9 is Aurora Christian at 7-2. And at number 10 is Stark County at 9-0. Other teams receiving votes are Newman Central Catholic at 7-2, Cesar Valier at 9-0, Anawan Weathersfield at 8-1, and KZ Westfield at 8-1. In Class 2A, Maroa Forsyth goes the distance, starting off number 1 at the beginning of the year, ending the year 1 at number 1. They are 9-0. Number 2 is Bloomington Central Catholic at 9-0, and number 3 is Seneca at 9-0. Coming into the 2A poll for the first time all year, as they are now in the 2A playoffs, are Wilmington at 8-1. Number 5 is Tri-Valley at 9-0. Number 6 is Athens at 7-2. Rockridge comes in at number 7 at 8-1. Shelbyville is number 8 at 8-1. Number 9 is Johnston City at 8-1, and number 10 is Modern Day at 6-3. Teams receiving votes are Farmington at 8-1, Westville at 8-1, Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Alvin at 7-2, and Moments at 8-1. And in Class 3A, Byron goes toe-to-toe for number 1 as they hold on to it all year long. They are 9-0. Number 2 is Montigny Catholic at 6-3. Number 3 is Princeton at 8-1. Williamsville is number 4 at 7-2. Roxana is number 5 at 9-0. Number 6 is DuQuoin at 9-0. Du-Pec is number 7 at 7-2. Olympia is number 8 at 7-2. St. Joseph Ogden is number 9 at 7-2. And Greenville comes in at number 10 at 9-0. Other teams receiving votes: Mount Carmel is 8-1. Tolono Unity 7-2. And the Oregon Hawks are 5-4. So that gives you a look at our NUICfootball.com final rankings for the year as we head into the playoffs.
Our NUICfootball.com Players of the Week is sponsored by our friends at Benchwarmers. Each winner receives an extra large pizza and a dozen boneless wings. Just stop in to claim your prize. Located in Freeport at 2143 West Galena Avenue, Benchwarmers is a great place to gather with friends to watch the big game. For American pub food and fun at its finest, check out Benchwarmers. And make sure you try the cheese curds.
Our Benchwarmers Player of the Week for Week 9, our final Benchwarmers Players of the Week, are as follows. In 11-man, Galena's Miles Schumacher is the recipient of our Player of the Week as he threw the ball for 65 yards, caught the ball for 30 yards, ran the ball for 40 yards, and had 3 total touchdowns, a passing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown to help Galena beat Stockton in the NUIC's oldest rivalry game. Congratulations, Miles, on your Player of the Week nomination. And in 8-man, our winner is Micah Tom Smith from Milledgeville. Micah rushed for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns in Milledgeville's win over Bushnell Prairie City. Congratulations, Micah, on your Player of the Week honors. Well, that's what we have to look forward to as we head into round 1 of the playoffs. There's going to be some games that are definitely going to be some blowout wins and a couple other games that we feel definitely could be some very good matchups. Time's going to tell how some of these matchups take place, but expect round 1, especially from our NUIC contingent. Most of them are going to be blowout wins in favor of our NUIC teams, but there are a couple that are going to be close and could potentially be upsets. Obviously, like we talked about, with Du-Pec and Oregon, while Du-Pec is the favorite in that game, definitely could see Oregon getting an upset there. Likewise, in the Fulton and Morrison game, Morrison comes in as the favorite, but it could definitely see Fulton getting an upset in that one. In the other ones, in the 8-man games, River Ridge is a heavy underdog. The Martinsville.Amboy should win big. Milledgeville should knock Orangeville out in a big way, and Polo should continue to advance by a large score as well. And if those games take place, the expectation would be to see 3 of our 8-man teams move on into the quarterfinal round. Likewise, on the 11-man side, 3 of our 4 teams are favored to move on, and we'll see how that transpires and translates into what we see in round 2. But there's a possibility we could see 3. There's a possibility we could see 4, but there's also a possibility we could only see 2. So it's that time of the year. You got to be ready to go, and it's win or go home. But it should be a great week of football. Some of these games are on Friday night, and some of them are Saturday, so it gives you an opportunity as a football fan to get to 2 different playoff games this weekend. So get out there, root for your teams, and as always, root for the NUIC.